Hi, my name is Chris. My journey in Montessori started 25 years ago. In our second acts, my wife and I had become educators because of our own children. My background is engineering and professional management. My wife, Anne, was in human resource development. At that time, our youngest was just turning 3. I must say, I became a better father when I began to understand Montessori because Montessori makes a lot of common sense. In this short seminar, we would like to share some ideas how one can bring Montessori inside the home. Firstly, they are not our ideas. They are the ideas of Dr. Maria Montessori. She was born in Italy in 1870. A physician by training, she also became an educator. Italy honored her legacy by placing her face on the 1,000 lira. I always say people can get buildings and streets named after them, but to get one's face on the national currency is something else. You must either be a national hero or a great president of a republic or someone who contributed uniquely to the advancement of humankind. Dr. Montessori was honored in that way by Italy. Montessori's revolutionized the ideas of how education was being delivered by schools during her day, 100 years ago as we speak. And even today, Montessori's ideas continue to work because, as I already said, Montessori makes a lot of common sense. Why? Well, because her ideas are all based on what naturally happens in all children, regardless of class, creed, or color. And she found out about all of those because she simply followed the child. In this seminar, we will share her ideas and observations. And I am sure as we get to illustrate them, you will find yourselves nodding your heads because you also observe them in your children. So, the first part of this presentation are Montessori's observations. After that, we will pause briefly to entertain some questions which you can type up in the Q&A box. Then we will tell you how we can bring Montessori inside the home. Now, fundamental to Montessori is her observation that children teach themselves. If you desire to be a Montessori parent, you will have to embrace this fundamental principle. I will give you a short anecdote to prove this. When I was orienting a group of parents, one mother brought along her daughter. I would say she was about 4 years old. 15 minutes into my presentation, what do you think the child would be doing in a room filled with adults? And with me, another adult, in front of her, talking about something she possibly could not relate to. I have heard these common answers. The child will be bored, or the child will be running around. But she did none of those. May I tell you what she did? She quietly stood up from where she was seated and started to approach a shelf where some Montessori materials were displayed. She picked one up and started to explore it. Pretty soon, a Montessori guide came alongside and started to guide her. Who initiated the learning process? The adult or the child? If we are to bring Montessori inside the home, you must embrace this fundamental principle that children teach themselves. Now I know what your next question will be. If children teach themselves, then what are teachers for? This is the reason why adults trained in Montessori pedagogy are called guides rather than teachers. As Montessori guides, we will not teach as much as we are to inspire. May I ask you if you tend to do more and do more excellently when you are bored, or when you're afraid your answer might be wrong, or when you are inspired? The same works for the children. When they are inspired, they will do more and they will do more excellently. Now, how does Montessori inspire the child? Well, she says we inspire the child by creating prepared environments. Prepared environment is a Montessori jargon. Let me take the first word, prepared. If we are bringing Montessori inside the home, we need to understand this word. Have you ever prepared for anything? It is deliberate, is it not? If you have, may I suggest that before one prepares, there has to be firstly a purpose or a vision. Then with a purpose, you must have a plan to accomplish the purpose. You must pool resources to execute the plan, and then the passion to deliver the plan so you can achieve your purpose. Applying the same principles to your precious little one, the question is, what is your vision for your child? What's your purpose? And what's the plan? Do we prepare ourselves and pool resources so that we can be passionate to execute the plan? I believe in the hearts of every mom and every dad is the desire to see how their beautiful baby will one day become a beautiful adult. The other word in the phrase prepared environment is environment. Now, there are two environments of the child. What are they? The school and the home. The question is the home a prepared environment? Equally important, who is the primary educator of the child, the school or the home? If the home is the primary educator of the child, shouldn't the home be a prepared environment as well? At this point, it is needful to underscore that the prepared environment is not just a physical space, but most vitally includes the adult in the environment. Have you ever been in a class of a boring teacher? How about a terror teacher? I am sure you were not inspired, were you? The primary educator at home are the parents. It is therefore crucial that the parents understand and embrace the fundamental principles of Montessori if we are to bring Montessori inside the home. And it seems we have limited time to prepare because our degree of control diminishes over time. This is our limited window of control. And the thing is, to exercise more control than what is needful will not be good for the child. If our vision and purpose is for the child to one day become a beautiful adult, we will need to slowly guide the child to become independent of us. And so while we are within this limited window of control, the genius of Montessori tells us to give the child liberty in a prepared environment. Remember, our influence is lasting, but our window of control is limited. Apart from the fundamental principle Montessori observed in children that children teach themselves, she also observed that children will naturally go through four distinct phases. Montessori saw these natural transitions as rebirths. She says, development is a series of rebirths. 0 to 6, first plane, infancy to early childhood. 6 to 12, second plane, childhood. 12 to 18 is your third plane, adolescence. And then lastly, 18 to 24, the fourth plane, which is maturity. She calls them the planes of development. Montessori core principle number 2. There are a few things we learn from these phases. One, they are points of arrival, and before you know it, departure, meaning it doesn't come back. And we will not have another chance with that phase ever again. Allow me to just underscore that. We will not have another chance with that phase ever again. Although there is a next one. Each phase becomes part of the child. As the child leaves that phase and enters a new one, a rebirth if you will, we all know it is the same child, but then again, a different one. The second thing we observe is that the previous phase ushers in the next phase. And while the next phase builds on the previous one, it does permeate, I must say, into the child as the present phase fades out. All this happens in order for the present phase to usher in the succeeding one. Dr. Montessori observes, and I quote, "Each preceding phase prepares the one that follow, forms its base, nurtures the energies that urge towards the succeeding period of life." End of quote. And at this point, our parental control starts to diminish, and we have the young adult. Formative development matures, and university years become just years of specialization. Dr. Montessori concludes. She says, and I quote, "For man is a unity and individuality that passes through interdependent phases of development. The vision, the purpose, the very thing we had planned for and prepared for at the start of our journey as parents, when one day they will be on their way to becoming a beautiful adult." When we look at the successive planes of development, I invite the parents to appreciate the three major facets of growth areas of our children we all should be watchful of. Allow me to quote from Scripture. "And Jesus grew in wisdom." One growth area is the intellect or the cognitive growth. "He grew in stature," which means physical growth or psychomotor growth, "and in favor with God and men," which is your spiritual and social growth, which both can be classified under affective growth. So there you have it for easy recall: head, hand, and heart. These are the three facets of growth. What we would like to do now is to highlight the sensitivities that happen in these facets of growth: cognitive, physical, and affective, as the child moves across the spectrum of development planes, first, second, and third planes. So what we will see next is really a matrix. Now, the planes of development define the sensitive periods, another Montessori jargon. Of the sensitive period, Montessori observes, and I quote, "It comes for a moment, but its benefits last for a lifetime." This means certain characteristics in a child will only happen for a brief period of time, and they have a lasting effect. What is the implication? Well, if we miss them or mess with them, it is to the detriment of the child's development. Remember, childhood is always a point of arrival and departure. We do not come back to it. We will now track the sensitivities across the development spectrum per growth area. Cognitively, the first plane child exhibits an absorbent mind and an effortless, intense concentration. They amazingly lock in onto something even if the environment around them is distracting. They are also very sensitive to language. Whatever your language at home is, they seem to magically acquire it without having to enroll in a formal language class. They are also sensitive to order, a foundational sensitivity to logical thinking. Now, when parents are interviewed what kind of questions their children ask by second plane, the hands down answer is why? Am I right? Every child around that age will ask you why, isn't it? When parents give the answer, granting they know the answer, what kind of question will be the next question? Why again? Regardless of class, creed, or color, they seek for reasons and purposes of things around them. The mind becomes naturally inquisitive, they ask why. Imaginative, they ask why not. And reasoning, they ask how come. Now, what do you think the mind of the adolescent will exhibit? If things around me have reasons and purposes, that's your second plane mind, then what is possibly the question of the adolescent? Let me pause there so that we can also think about it because we've been there. Now, Montessori suggests this mind becomes reflective and interpretive. If things around me have reasons, then what is my reason? If things around me have purposes, then what is my purpose? We go now to the second facet of growth, physical or psychomotor. The first plane child needs to develop what we call gross and fine motor skills. By second plane, the child runs and climbs and cartwheels, stability. Then you have another unstable development plane, just like the first plane, because the third plane, adolescent, exhibits rapid growth, accompanied by hormonal moodiness. And then puberty sets in, which is the ability of the human body to sexually reproduce. Affectively, the first plane children are largely egocentric. They won't share. Am I right? Yet by second plane, the egocentricity of the first plane surrenders to the social child. We also see the emergence, and this is very important, my dear parents, the emergence of moral awareness. Their sense of what is right and what is wrong, and what is fair and unjust comes naturally. The third plane adolescent, just before becoming an adult, begins to reflect on his purpose and his mission. Remember, if things around me have reasons, then what is my reason and what is my purpose? They are not self-conscious about this. In the same manner, the second plane children are not even aware they're asking why. Hand in hand with a reflective mind, and the adolescent will experience an evolving sense of dignity, which is self-worth, and a sense of justice, which is an affective component that pertains to a community that surrounds the adolescent. In Montessori, the hot spots of growth are the first plane and third plane, meaning we need to tread carefully in these planes of development. By the fourth plane, formative education or development matures, and university years are simply years of specialization. I want to be a doctor, an artist, a chef, an engineer, a business person, a graphic artist. Those are specialization, but the adult has already been formed. You have the young adult. There are no more sensitivities that will be distinctly uh, unique and uniquely happening in this plane. Now, you have heard me saying Montessori makes a lot of common sense. And why? Well, because what she's observed, most of them, we actually already observe in our children. But I think it takes a genius to bring out what we commonly cannot connect and then to tell us what to do or what not to do with what we commonly see. This thing of telling us what to do or what not to do, I believe is the genius and the legacy of Dr. Maria Montessori. And she's put this all together in a very scientific way. She's observed the children for many, many years all through her life. And she tells us, let me tell you how you can prepare the environment. Do you envision for your child to be smart and creative and to think critically? May I suggest that the child is actually wired to be those? It is not like he or she will be unable. While recognizing every child is uniquely gifted, we believe nature has endowed every child the capacity to think critically and to be creative. Critical thinking involves objective analysis, evaluation, and synthesis, which leads to innovation and creation, which really are your higher order thinking skills. The sensitivities of the first plane in all facets of growth all cooperate to bring these about. In fact, one may say all about the first plane is really brain development. And the brain is the only body organ that, when impaired, all other body functions are impaired. An impairment of the body organ responsible for any of the five senses, eyes for sight, skin for touch, nose for smell, ear for hearing, tongue for taste, will still allow the human being to function, but not so with the brain. It does make sense that in understanding the nature of physiological development, the brain takes precedence in terms of sensitivity happening even from the womb and encompassing the seminal years of infancy and early childhood. So that by the second plane, the children's innate sense of inquisitiveness and imagination will move them to explore for reasons and purposes of things they observe around them. Do you wish for your children to be sociable, friendly, and develop empathy and kindness? Again, nature allows them the sensitivities to acquire these traits. You have the social child of the second plane, when children develop friendships, and you have the emergence of moral awareness that build up to a sense of justice by the third plane. What about being good morally, to be fair and just? We believe, again, children have the wiring for these traits when they step onto the second plane and third plane. How about to be a leader? A good leader for that matter. Well, the social aspect of the second plane is not just to have a set of friends, but Montessori observes children will explore the innate ability to organize by themselves for a defined purpose. Given a proper environment to explore these sensitivities like a multi-age grouping that Montessori is known for, children develop leadership traits in a natural way that finds further reinforcement in real-life settings going into the third plane. What about to be able to live a purposeful, meaningful, and fulfilling life? Is it not what counts in the end to live a life of purpose so that we can live a meaningful and a fulfilling life as adults? Don't we desire this in all our children? And where do children get to explore these sensitivities? Certainly not during the first nor the second plane. We believe the third plane sets these up like a laboratory of life, where they become reflective, of their purpose while developing a sense of dignity, which is self-worth, and a sense of justice as it pertains to a community that surrounds the adolescent. Not to be taken for granted, being physically healthy and able is obviously a sensitivity across all periods. As you scan the whole page, notice that for each of these traits there are matching sensitivities that naturally unfold across the planes of development. And Montessori believes in preparing the right environment for each plane that will optimize the development of these laudable traits. But the thing is, the sensitivities are not always there. That if we miss them, we really do not have another chance. Or that the sensitivities are so delicate that if we mess with them, it is to the child's detriment. In fact, it is even possible we are preparing an environment unknowingly that runs counter to what nature demands, what the environment should be. Think about it. The adults indeed, both from the home and in partnership with trained Montessori guides, do have crucial roles in bringing up a beautiful child to become a beautiful adult. It is thus a privilege that must be understood very well, ethically, morally, and scientifically. In the succeeding parts of this presentation, we will explore the prepared environments for each plane. And for each of these planes, we will explain how the home can be assisted in bringing the ideas of Montessori right inside the home.